What is up, Nerf Nation? It is your boy Normatico, and today I'm back with another blaster review of those things. It has been a dry spell here in the US for blaster releases. We've been dealing with just Dark Zone giving us new colors on same old blasters that they've released for the past 2 years, and X-Shot dragging their feet regarding getting the AEB to us. Thank you, tariffs. Now, Hasbro, of course, they did announce that they were going to do their Loadout series, and I actually was able to see them before they were even released to the general public at the Toy Fair, mainly because of the fact that I was part of the Hasbro, I guess, Fun Labs program and got to see the Galactic Hero or Galactic Commander and the Arctic Zero Point before anyone else did. Not in my hands, but I actually got to see the images of them and said, hey, this is pretty cool. Now, of course, those have not dropped here in the US, but just recently on Amazon, you're able to get a hold of the Shadow Recon, which is part of the Loadout series, and that is what we have here today. Now, of course, it is delivered in one of the typical brown Hasbro boxes that you get from Amazon, but let's see just what it looks like on the inside. So, pulling this out, let's take care of this brown cup box here. All right. We have, of course, the typical open box that is known with the actual N series, most of the blasters. This blaster is smaller than what I thought it was going to be. It did look bigger in the images, but let's take a look at what we have here. It is part of the Loadout. It does have a really cool skin, which is different for the N series, and in my opinion, it looks pretty hot. I do like the color scheme of this. Looks pretty fun. Now, it does claim that it has 1,000 customizable loadout options when you do all of the different, I guess, attachments that are going to come out with the Loadout series. I'm guessing that the N1 series version of Modulus is called Loadout. So here's hoping. I actually was a fan of the Modulus series. Let's see if this is actually the same thing. Now, it is a pump grip with a revolving chamber. So it is basically an agility with a pump grip. I know a lot of people are saying that they're not really being original with some of the N1 darts or say the N1 series. However, I guess it's a step in the right direction. Plus, let's be honest here, if you go back to every single series that Hasbro has released, it really is a new variation on the same theme. So let's go ahead and actually get our box cutter here and take care of this. This is not frustration-free packaging, so let's do this. Now, all right, we got quite a few little ties here. 2 sets of ties, and you have your blaster in your hand. Now, this is not the biggest blaster in the world. Let's take a look at what we have here so far. Of course, you do have 1, 2, 3, 4 versions of rail. I'm not sure if this is Picatinny or if this is just Nerf Tactical. We will have to check that out. Of course, I do have some attachments here. Let me see if any of these will work. And it looks like we actually have an end strike lug. Does this work with Classic? It does not, which means that we will be getting more actual lug attachments. Now, of course, you could probably use the ones for the Shadow Storm on here, maybe even the buttstock, though the colors do not match at all. So we'll take a look at that. That being said, that pump grip works okay. That sound does sound like your typical N-series sounds when it comes to the plunger tube. So that means that this should have a beefy plunger system inside. That trigger, though, feels a little stiff. I am going to hazard a guess that this is not an actual spring. It is probably just one of the plastic springs that Hasbro is known for when they want to, I guess, save on costs. Of course, it does come with this really weird faux magazine. Let me get this cut open here, which is, in fact, actual dart storage. Now, this seems to work as follows. Yep, that is, actually, I guess there's 5 rails. That just clips onto the Nerf rail down there. That does look like Nerf rail, not Picatinny after all. That is kind of disappointing. When I saw the images, when I was part of the Hasbro Fun Lab, it did appear to be Picatinny rail. I am disappointed. I was hoping that we would actually see something different from Hasbro, adopt the Picatinny rail system that we can use different, I guess we should say, accoutrements for these blasters. But you know what? I guess it can be forgiven. You know, nobody said it was going to be Picatinny rail. That was just an assumption on my behalf and on a lot of people who actually saw the images. But all in all, the blaster does feel comfortable in hand. And of course, you do get 14 of the M1 darts. Looks to be a 6 dart chamber. So I'm assuming that you're gonna get 6 plus 12. Let's take a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14. So, okay. You don't get enough to actually put all of your darts in the chamber and load this up with darts. That's weird. That is really weird. Usually when Hasbro has released darts with their blasters for the N series, they provide you with plenty of darts so that if you actually have dart storage, you load up your dart storage and you actually can load up the dart. That is different. So, okay, I guess they're going back to their old tricks, but whatever. And then, of course, you do have this hole right here in the grip. I don't know what this is for. I'm assuming that eventually this is going to be for some sort of attachment, but, I mean, yeah. Not sure what this is going to be for yet. Hopefully we'll be able to see that because, again, I'm really curious as to what they're doing here. You know, I know that we've seen in other blasters in the past where they have a hole here, which is, I guess, a single dart storage, but that's not deep enough for a dart, so I'm not entirely sure what that is for. According to the box, one of the attachments that comes with a different blaster, I believe it's the Arctic 0 point. That is where the buttstock attaches to. So, okay, I guess I can see that. I've seen weirder designs on other blasters. That almost does look, come to think about it, like the Coke bottle attachment point that is found on the XML Unicorn, but obviously different geometry here, but it's the same concept is what I'm trying to say. So, all right, that is what that's for. Now, there's not instructions, but if you look at the box, you can kind of see where it's at. Now, let's take a look at here because, of course, we have our 14 N1 darts buried into the box. All right, I apologize for that jump, but I had some darts that went flying all over the place. Now that I've recovered them, let's go and actually load them up into the blaster itself. Of course, you do have a spot to load 2 darts at a time. This is very similar to the agility, 1 on either side of the barrel, and you can just go ahead and load up 2, rotate, load up 2 more.
Rotate.
We're all set. Now that we have actually our chamber loaded, let's take the remainder of the darts, let's put them in the actual dart storage so we can see how this works. Surprisingly, it is kind of snug. This is different from the actual the strike back where some of the darts were a little bit loose. This holds pretty well, and it doesn't look like there's teeth there that are going to be causing damage to the darts, which is always nice. That's one of my biggest concerns when it comes to dart storage on the external dart storage for the blasters, is that it can cause damage to the darts. Now, of course, you do have space for 7 darts on the storage itself, so technically this does hold 14 plus 6 in the chamber. So you're looking at a total of 20 darts. In reality, that is what they should have provided you with, but they only gave you 14, so there you have it. And given that you can actually chamber 6 at a time, it's making me question why they did this, because frankly, I would think that if you have 6, you would hold 12, not 14. So technically, you can actually refill your chamber twice, and then you have 2 additional ones. So I don't know why they went that way. Leave it at 12 or boost it up to 18. Just don't give us a half reload chamber. Now, regarding FPS, we're going to run this through the chronograph real quick. I'm assuming that we're going to hit anywhere between 80 to 90. And then after that, we're going to actually pop this sucker open and see what it looks like on the inside. So yeah, stay tuned. Up next, my chronograph test. Okay, so as you can see, the chronograph numbers do not lie. We got over 90 at one point in time, but we averaged in the mid 80s. There were a couple of variances that we got into 70. I think we hit 60 at one point in time. But I was able to find that those darts were damaged. It looks like when one of the darts dropped down, my puppy got a hold of it, and yeah, she decided to give it a good squish with her teeth. Yeah, I can see that she's being corrected now by the older dog. That's the noise that you hear in the background. Now, we're going to go ahead and actually open this thing up and see just what's inside. Let's take a look at this blaster right now. All right, so that's a lot of screws. I counted 18 on the main body plus 4, so we're looking at 22 screws. Um, you would think that I was unscrewing a long shot. So I don't see any hidden screws. We do have 3 different screw sizes. You have, of course, a medium standard size screw. There's a couple of small ones that are mainly these little connector points here. And then you have these 2 really long ones. These are part of the actual pump grip itself. They go here and here. So let's go and actually open up the blaster now. Oh, I think I had one screw that I forgot. Right down here. Now this should open up. So these are the internals of the actual blaster itself. Let me just hold that here. So judging by this, we can actually see a pretty decent plunger tube here. So we might be able to fit K25 in here. And then of course we have the catch spring. And as I suspected, this is not an actual spring. This is just the 2 little plastic pegs. They did skimp out on that. But again, for $14.99, this blaster, I'm not surprised. You have the barrel rotating mechanism here. You have your actual barrel. There is no actual pegs because it is End series. And yeah, that is pretty straightforward, I'll be honest with you. The pump grip is right here. Now, let's take a look at what kind of spring we have in here and see if we can actually get some improvements on performance. Of course, we do have the actual speed holes here. We're going to go ahead and seal those up now. That way we can actually see if we can get a stronger spring in here. Of course, these are here because when you actually have a smaller spring, or I should say a lower power spring, that actually helps. Conventional wisdom is that you would cover that up, but that only works for high-powered springs. When it's a softer power spring, this actually helps to get a better boost. So let's take a look at what we got here. Do you have those clips? Wow, that comes off really easily. And yes, that is just a screw. Now that spring, you know, we might be able to do something with this spring with a different blaster, but I think we can get something stronger in here. Let's take a look at what we have in my spring bag, and we'll be right back. I was going to go into my spring bag, but I think I saw something I might want to use instead. I had purchased a upgrade spring from Out of Darts for the Infinite, and I'm going to see if I can fit that in here. Now, that is weird because this part comes off, And this is clipped in here. Those bastards. Those dirty rat bastards. So I guess in order to get this off, we have to break these clips open. Oh man, I don't want to have to do that. I don't have to do that at all. This is Hasbro being Hasbro again, folks. All right, let's see. Let me see if we can do something with this. Okay, so this is a 2.1 spring from Out of Darts. This is for the Kronos and for the Fury X, supposedly. This might not. Oh boy. Well, let's take a look here. Let's see what we can do. See if I can pry this open. I can always just glue it back if anything. Alright, so I was able to pry that open. Now we're going to have to bend that back. When I do bend it back in here, I am probably going to go ahead and actually apply some super glue. That way it gets held shut there. So that spring just pops up. Will this bigger spring fit in here? It does not. Crap, that is way too wide. So this will not fit in here. The Kronos upgrade spring will not fit in here. Let's see if we have any springs that actually match this. I'll be right back. Alright, so I was able to find in my bag of springs a, looks like it's an upgrade spring for, I want to say it's a Falcon Fire, it seems. And this is a very tight fit, but it looks like it will fit here with a little bit of pre-compression as well. So we're going to try this out here. Okay, and then that's pretty lubricated, but I do want to go ahead and cover this up, so let's get some tape. Just use standard electrical tape. This will help get a good seal on here. Alternately, you can use electrical tape, but I think you should be fine with just, I should say duct tape. This is electrical tape. But this should be fine. I don't foresee this being a problem. Now, if you wanted to use some 25 end spring and cut it down, you could possibly do so. I just chose to go with this spare bit of spring that I found that looks like it's a, I want to say it's a 7 kilogram or a 9 kilogram spring. And yeah. Now, how did this go? Of course, it does have an air restrictor there. I could probably take that out if I wanted to, but let's leave it in for now. Yep, leave that in. Okay, so real quick, sorry for that little cut. One thing I do want to point out is that when you actually put this thing back together, you want to make sure that you clip this the right way because of the fact that this is not a reversible clipping system. So if you do not have it the right way, kind of like I did earlier, it's not going to close properly because, yeah, it's just the way that this thing is supposed to rest in here. So this should fit like that, and that is that. Now, I could take out the air restrictor again and open it all back up, but I'm going to leave that like this right now. We actually have a decent seal right here with that air restrictor, and then this should feed backwards like this. Maybe. Yep, that feeds like that. That pushes that back. Okay. And then that catch spring does seem pretty beefy, so I'm going to leave that alone. And I'm going to try to close this blaster back up real fast. And then we have 4, 5. Okay, so we have plenty of screws in here already. I feel safe in attaching the pump grip now. And we can see how well that works. I actually attach one more screw in here.
Up to here. Yep. We have one long screw right here.
Now, in theory, this should work once I screw this last screw in here. And if it catches, we are good to go. Oh yeah, that caught, and that feels a lot more powerful. So let me actually run this really quick through a chronograph, or actually we just load one dart here. We'll be able to see this real quick. I guess that loaded the wrong way. Yeah, that's more powerful. How much more powerful? We'll find out shortly when we do another chronograph test, but I'm happy with this modification so far. And yeah. All right, so I'm back with my final thoughts regarding the Shadowspeed Recon from the new N Series Loadout line. Um, you know, when I first fired the blaster prior to modding it, I was okay with the performance that it got for N Series. We did hit up to 90, and we were averaging in the mid 80s, and that was okay. That's N Series. Um, Surprisingly simple to mod, just like all the other N Series blasters. This is why I believe that we really need to start giving this line a second look. I know that people don't want to use proprietary darts. However, please, I need to harp on this. The darts are not the problem. The problem is that people want to use the same kind of dart across all the other blaster lines, and that's simply not the case with N Series. That does not mean that the blasters are bad. Look, This solved all the problems that we were complaining about Elite 2.0. You've heard me say it once, and I'll say it again. It is easy to mod. There's no solvent welding. The only issue was the little plunger head getting it actually off, and even then you saw how easy that was. It was not a difficult thing at all. I just took a pry bar, pried open those little clips that hold it open, and glued it back together. I slapped in a tighter spring. I want to say again it was like a 9 kilogram spring, and we saw a significant jump in FPS. So now regarding accuracy, unfortunately it is N series, so they're not the most accurate darts, but they will be accurate within about 30 feet. So for a basement battle or a backyard battle, this is actually a solid choice. Now, it's not going to say that it is without faults. There are a couple of problems that I have with this blaster. I'm going to discuss those here shortly. But that being said, for $14.99, this is a great blaster, and it is a surprisingly simple mod. I believe that I'm actually the first person to modify one of these, given that this blaster just came out within the last 48 hours on Amazon. Now, let's talk about what is the biggest flaw about this blaster. First of all, the size of it. You know, it's not a bad size, but it could be a little bit larger. That pump grip, I feel as if it was a little bit further out, might be a little bit better. The other thing I would say is that only having 6 darts in the cylinder, you know what? I mean, we're already at the point where we're beyond 6. Hasbro has done it before where they've had more than that. I think back to the Lawbringer. I think back to the Negotiator from the Doomlands lines. Give us at least 8. 6, okay, this is supposed to be a primary blaster, a smaller primary, but still a primary. Give us more than 6 at a time. The second thing that I will say is that this little clip thing here, this extended, I guess, dart storage, it's not necessary. I think that it's a nice touch, I guess, to have dart storage on a blaster, but they could have easily made this a top rail and just have it laid out up here. It would have been a lot more ergonomically appealing. That being said, it does not get in the way of the pump grip, but it still feels like it would just be unwieldy. And, I mean, why make it look like it's a magazine? Let's just be honest here. That is going for demographic. This is going to cause confusion. Now, I do dig the fact that it is a very modular system. I enjoy the fact that you can actually put the buttstocks from all the other blasters on here from the Loadout line. I can't wait for those to come out so I can, you know, mix and match them and have some good times with it, because that was one of the fun parts, I think, of the modular series, was to see how goofy you can be. This is one of those things that this is what Hasbro and Nerf is about. It's about having fun. It's about being goofy. It's about customizing your blaster. And you know what? With this cool paint scheme, it's really nice. The red and the blue offset each other really well. That gold highlight is just chef's kiss. It's a very attractive blaster when it's much different than the N series lines. The N series lines with their blue and their orange, you know what? They're okay. I'm not going to say that they're ugly, but this just, it looks sharper. It draws your attention even more. When I first saw this blaster during the toy fair, I was hesitant, but since it was the first one to launch and it was at a great price point of $14.99, I said, why the heck not? That's actually, you know, a cheap blaster. Let's be honest here. It is right there with the Pinpoint when it comes to the price point. Actually, a little less than the Pinpoint was when it first launched. So I'm okay with this. I am very okay with this. So there you have it. Shadowspeed Recon, $14.99, available on Amazon. Feel free to pick one up. I do thank you for watching Secondhand Blasters. If you have another blaster that you'd like for me to review, go ahead and actually leave so in the comments. And we are very close to hitting 600 subscribers, which means it'll be time to do another giveaway soon. So I'll have to start thinking as to what we're going to be giving away. Until next time, y'all, keep on blasting.